Okay, I have written down both the least squares regression line that the calculator found. It's slightly different than the one that we found by hand, but I wrote it down, and I have written down the very first line that we found, our line of best fit, that we found by hand when we calculated slope and used point slope form. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So now we're going to put them both into the calculator, and we're going to look at them, and then I'm going to show you how to find with an actual number. We obviously know that the least squares regression line is the better of the two, but you have to have something to prove that, to show for a fact. You have data to show that it is the better line of the two. So I'm going to go ahead and type in the one that we found by hand. So we calculated our own slope by doing, oh, I keep forgetting it won't let me hit backspace. We've calculated this one by hand, doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then we used the formula to find our, and I have to quit hitting that because that doesn't work. 104.01. All right, so zoom 9. This is our first line it's drawing, and then the second line is the line that we did by hand. And you can see the second line actually goes through 2 dots. That was the 2 dots that I chose. Now, I just chose them randomly by looking at the table. I didn't even take into consideration which 2 lines I was choosing, which if I'd plotted it by hand, I would have done that. I would have tried to draw a line, and I would have chosen 2 that it actually hit, and I didn't. But you can definitely tell which line is better, but we need to prove it. So let's look, first of all, the space. I'm going to look at the line that the calculator found, the least squares line, and look, these data points, it almost goes through that one, and then that one, and these 2 that are going through the other line. All right, that space between the data points and the line, the least squares regression line, are called residuals. It's what's left. There's this much space. It's a residual. If you look at that versus the residuals to our other line, so let me get a different color, and we'll draw the residuals to the line that we calculated by hand. It actually went through 2 data points, but then there's this, and I'm kind of drawing crooked so you can see, but, and this one, and this one, and then there's a little bit there. You can see that the residuals, the pink, to the line that we did by hand, there's more of that than there is of the orange. And if you lined them up end to end to end, it would probably be quite a bit longer. The pink, it's further away. The distance that our dots are further away from the line we did by hand than the line that the calculator did. But we need something to show that, actual data to show it. So if you think about what we're just doing, I'm figuring out how far up and down the data points are from the line. So we're going to go into our, let me erase all of that. We're going to go into our stat list, and I need to put in line 3, I'm going to go up to line 3, and I'm going to put in my least squares residuals, the one that I have here in red. So make sure you're highlighted on the L3 so that you're typing it as a formula, 3.167. And instead of an X value, I want to put my L1 value so that it knows that I'm putting in my actual, sorry, I'm not used to using my keyboard. Okay, so L1, so that's for X. Minus 55.797. Now, when I hit enter, those are my Y predictor values based off of my least squares regression line. Now I'm going to do the same thing in L4, but I'm going to put in the line that we did by hand. So 3.67, I want it to multiply by my L1 list because that's where my X values are. And I keep forgetting, you guys, that this doesn't, when you hit minus on the keyboard, it puts a negative sign and not the minus sign, and that messes it up badly. So, all right, when I hit enter, these are more predictor Y values, and you can tell they're close. They're predictor Ys. So my L3 is the red line. That was the least squares regression line. My L4 is my by hand line of best fit line. Now what we want to do is figure out the residuals. So I'm going to go over to list 5. And when I'm talking about the residuals, I'm talking about how far is the actual data value. So my original table, this table right here, table 5, how far is the Y value from the actual data table from my predictor Ys? So I'm going to do line 2 minus L3. That's going to be my red predictor. That is the distances away. So my first dot is 3.4 spaces away. My second dot is 3.2 spaces away, then 3.5. And this dot's like almost touching 0.262. Those are the distances away. Again, I've got positives and negatives, so that's not going to do me any good until I square those values. So I'm going to go ahead and come over here to L6, and I'm going to square list 5. All right, so now I have squared my residuals. And now I don't know if you're aware of this, but if you look down here, you can see L1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's as many lists as I have. And I need to do my other predictor values. So before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and sum my squared residuals. And it would be just like taking those little orange lines and putting them end to end and finding out how far away are all the dots. So I'm going to go to a main screen, second quit, stat, sorry, I always do that, second stat, and we're going to math, and we need to sum. We're summing list 6. So 49.924. I'm going to put it up here by the red line because it comes from the red line. So 49.924. Oh, I shouldn't do it in yellow, should I? That won't make sense. 49.924. This goes with this predictor value. Now we have to do the same thing for our by hand predictor value. So I'm going to go back to my stat list, back to stat edit, and my list 5 and list 6, I'm going to clear them out and I'm going to do them again. So clear, enter. Remember, you arrow up onto the L6, hit clear and enter, and it clears just that list. So what I need to do for list 5 now is list 4 has my Y predictor value that I did by hand. So I'm going to do list 2. Those are my original Y values minus list 4. Those are my predictor values that I did by hand. Now I need to square those. Now look, you can see right here, 0. That's because that is one of the data points that I chose. So we're going to go over to list 6 and square them. So I'm squaring list 5. And then I need to sum that. So I'm going to go to my main page just like I did before, and I'm going to sum list 6. And I can actually highlight it and hit enter. and I get 137.158. So you can see that's a huge difference, 137.158. So these are called your residual squared values. And the smaller the residual square, then the better your line of best fit is.